Hey geeks, welcome to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm really glad you're here. You know, we've been off for 3 weeks, I think, Simon, and I'm really glad I'm back. Well, I'm glad you're back. I miss doing the show. It's a nice way to do something on the weekend. Reach out to other people and around the world, and so I kind of miss it now that we've been doing this for almost 2 straight years. And anyway, welcome back. I hope you're having a great weekend. I hope you have fun plans for the weekend, safe fun plans, of course. And we got a really great show today. I'm really excited about our guest. And I guess I could share my slides would help, right, Simon? Sorry about that. It's been 3 weeks. I forgot what to do. Share screen. And I'm really behind on this. There we go. There we go. All right. We have an exciting guest today. James Montemagno is going to be here. He's a program manager, developer, community at Microsoft. I really enjoyed James' videos, and that's why I invited him on the show. And we're going to be talking all about MAUI today because that's what he's focused on right now. And I also invited him on because there's not enough long-haired developers talking on the internet anymore. So those of us with long hair, we need to represent, I guess. Okay, so show 65, September 17th. We only have one more show before we go into hiatus again, or one or two more shows before we go into hiatus because I'm coming to India in less than a month. I'll be in India. The big conference, C# Corner Conference. I don't have a slide for it. Sorry about that. If Simon's got it handy, he can put it up. But the big C# Corner Conference is the October 14th and 15th. I'm really excited about coming back to India for the first time since COVID hit. I'm also bringing some laptops. So far, I've got 4 laptops coming for the Voice of Slum NGO that I raise money for in India. So when I was there in 2019, they told me they need laptops for the kids to do learning. And so myself and Joe, who's one of the other speakers for the conference, we're bringing a total of 4 laptops for the kids there. So I'm excited about coming. I'm excited about coming to see you all again. I've missed you all during these years of COVID. And I'll be joining the tour in Mumbai, and then I'll be in the other 2 cities too, and the big conferences in Delhi, of course, at a new location. Just so you know, we're not at the Leela Hotel anymore, which I really like the Leela Hotel, but I guess we're at the Hyatt Hotel or something like that, Simon. And yeah, it's been 3 weeks, and so I'm really excited about coming back to India. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I should just shut up now because I'll keep talking. So please don't forget about our friends in Ukraine. Even though they've retaken some land the last couple of weeks, a lot of other bad things have been uncovered because of that. And so if you can keep them in our thoughts, and if you can support the people in Ukraine in any way, I hope that you do, because we need this over, because not only this is, really, really affecting the people in the Ukraine, but it's affecting the whole world, unfortunately. And I want to go back. I have selfish motives. I want to go back to Ukraine. I was there in 2015, and I've been dying to go back ever since. I loved my trip there to the Ukraine. And I really, really want to come back, but who knows how long that will be now. But so let's get this over with. We don't need wars anymore in this day and age, if you ask me. So we got some news this week. Visual Studio 2022 Preview 2 is out. And also the release candidate for the .NET SDK came out today. I immediately installed both. And Visual Studio, if you try to compile .NET 7 projects doesn't work for me. So be careful depending what you're doing. And that's all wrapped around something is really broken with the analyzers in .NET 7. And so if you run into a problem with Visual Studio Preview, just temporarily turn off the analyzers so you can build from the command line. And I'm actually working with the team right now. It's going too slow if you ask me, but I'm actually going back and forth with the team trying to figure this out. So, but we're getting close to .NET 7 being released. And so I'm really excited. And I've been doing a ton of benchmark testing in the 3 weeks we've been on hiatus, and I'm sharing those results. I'll talk about it in a minute. So go check it out. I have a new C# Corner article on speeding up the string builder using the object pool in .NET. If you haven't heard about the object pool, this is really the first time I've used it. And if you go to this article, you can see that using an object pool really can speed up. Instead of creating the object every time, it kind of sits in the pool, kind of like ASP.NET kind of does, sort of. And so I hope you check out the article because that's how you can get some more performance gains out of String Builder. And we need that in the cloud because everything we do in the cloud, we're being charged for. And so if we can, scratch off a little bit of time, that means less cost for your company or yourself, right? So I hope you check out the article. And with that, I want to introduce James. James is a principal lead program manager for .NET community at Microsoft. He's been a .NET developer since 2005, working in a range of industries, including game development, printer software, and web services. In his spare time, he mostly cycles around Seattle or guzzles gallons of coffee at a local coffee shop. I wish I could do that. I'm too old to guzzle coffee like that anymore. And he also co-hosts the weekly development podcast, Merge Conflict. So welcome, James.
Hey, David, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing super awesome. It's just another, beautiful day. Just super excited to get out this weekend and do some hiking, do some stuff. But I'm excited to be here with you talking about all sorts of good .NET stuff. And it's kind of fun because I think you and I maybe crossed paths a few times, but I was going back to some of your older videos. And I did one from Jeremy Lickness like a year ago plus. I think it was episode 5 or 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was kind of similar where like you knew of Jeremy, but you hadn't spent hours upon hours like talking to Jeremy. And then also at that time, it was similar to this time of year because we have our big .NET conference coming up, .NET Conf. We're about to launch a new version of .NET. It's every year now, but it's a pretty exciting time, I think, in general.
Yeah, I had a fascinating discussion with him a couple months ago. I don't know how long ago that was, Simon. And we were talking about the burpees he does, because of his disease. And we also started, I didn't know this until I talked to him that time, but his astrophotography he does, it's pretty amazing. And I'm an award-winning photographer, and I mostly work for rock bands, but some of the stuff that he does is pretty amazing. I just didn't know like a normal person can do photography like that. I mean, it's like, it almost looks like, Hubble telescope kind of stuff,
I think I have to ask, I've talked to Jeremy a lot about it because I live out in Central Oregon and he goes to the coast a lot and I go out into the middle of the desert, and just look up sometimes, just absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
I think honestly, what I always say, we always do a lot of housework and things like that. It's just YouTube. I swear you can learn anything on YouTube nowadays. You need to just go, it's the search engine to how to fix everything, and even me, it's like, oh, I have like a leaky toilet, or I have like, I don't know how to do this. I was installing a new garbage disposal in the kitchen. I was like, how do I install a garbage disposal? It's like, watch this 30 seconds and it'll, done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can save so much money, but I think you can also learn so much too. So it's been fun to watch Jeremy on his journey and then incorporate it into his demos. We just did a focused .NET Conf event on .NET MAUI, and he made an entire app all on Astro, stuff like that. So it was really cool. It's fun to bring your passions back to your job.
Yeah. And that's actually kind of why I do the crazy dressing up like a rock and roll star and stuff, when I speak. And because I tried a number of years ago, I decided I wanted to kind of find a way to marry my love of photography, which I've been doing since a little kid, and my love of music, since I'm also a musician, as you saw by the intro video, right? And try to somehow merge that with my conference speaking. And that's why, I dress up like a rock star. I throw out custom guitar picks. It's kind of a crazy fun time when you come see me speak. But I kind of did that, to just get people in a different mood and pay attention. I found they pay attention more if you do goofy stuff like that. And they also pay. I also found a long time ago when I was teaching at the university is if you threaten to throw things at people, they pay attention more. So if you threaten to throw guitar picks, I've beamed people in the head when they weren't paying attention and stuff, and so it kind of works out for me at least.
It's part of the storytelling. I changed my career, over a decade ago from pure software developer working and writing code every day to more in the advocacy part. So I joined Xamarin, in 2011. So 11 years ago as a developer advocate when I didn't even know what a developer advocate was. And I learned really early on there. I was really fortunate that I got one day with a speaking coach, and it really changed my entire outlook of everything that I watch, every session that I go to, every time I am just in conversation. It really is this storytelling aspect of it, right? There's this arc that's so important in movie and television, but also equally important as your story when you get on stage, when I create a video, when we talk to anybody. It's a story arc of why is this so important? Why should you care about it? Because the average individual is only going to retain 5 to 10% of a session or of a movie, right? So really grasping them and sucking them in and understanding that is really the most important part. So having something that you identify with that helps become part of your story is so important because it helps you bring you to the stage, and people, I think, really respond to that.
I think so, and I've even started playing guitar before some of my sessions if I can arrange all that before at the conference. In India, they have me play guitar and smash it and throw the pieces out in the audience, which is just crazy. They go literally insane, and Simon can tell you they go insane.
I think anytime anyone's smashing any guitars, I think it's just pure chaos everywhere and pure joy at the same time. There's something beautiful and a beautiful disaster. So.
Yeah, and I started playing the rock videos before my session starts. Kind of to get people in a different mood, from sitting on their butts all day, and kind of change their mindset to get ready to pay attention to me for an hour, and then I found out that just me watching the videos pumped me up, right? Because of course I played my favorite videos from the 80s and stuff like that. And it pumped me up too. So it kind of worked both ways and got both of us, pumped up. And because, I want people to retain more than a couple percent of what I talk about. Right. And so, when I hit 25 years of speaking, I wrote a big, long article about it, how 25 years of speaking has really changed my life, not only work life, but personal life, everything. Right.
Yeah.
And I even did a conference talk about it in a couple places, one being the country of Mauritius. I did it. And because, me forcing because when I started software engineering, I was deathly afraid to speak in front of people. Right. I know you all out there probably don't believe me. And when I say that, people go, I don't believe it. And I go, well, it's totally true. Right. I would rather die than speak in front of people, and so I forced myself, literally the year I became a software engineer, to start learning how to do that because I knew I would need that in the future someday. And that one thing has really dramatically changed my career and my personal life. Just learning how to speak in front of people and being able to interact with people. And that also helps me deliver software projects that get patented by the U.S. Patent Office, right? To me, it's a whole kind of circle thing that comes back and feeds everything else.
It's another skill. It's another talent. I started doing public speaking, like, a long time ago, but I never really got into video content by myself in an educational way. I'd often be able to go after Xamarin was acquired by Microsoft.
Mhm.
I lived in Seattle for a long, long time. So I would go on campus, and we have wonderful studios and amazing producers and everyone there. But it's a
Yeah.
different experience, and it's a different skill, because I was still in that presenter mode. And during
Mhm.
COVID, I really wanted to start teaching people different, like outside of work, because during work hours, I become a manager and I was still doing public speaking, but I didn't have time to commit to say, I'm gonna create these long form videos or kind of be more of an educational coach. I just enjoyed that. I wanted to give it a spin, but it
Mhm.
also enabled me to learn a new skill, right? Like
Mhm.
presenting and speaking is a skill.
It is.
So editing videos, recording videos, doing live streams is a skill. That's why I started the podcast that I've done
Mhm.
for decades now. At this point, I've done many of them over the years. I've done on all topics, but the one I keep going with my buddy Frank Kruger, we've done for 300 and I don't know some odd episodes at this point. But I'm the editor, right? I'm the editor. I'm the
Mhm.
producer. I'm learning all these little skills that are fun, because while my heart is I'm a developer and I still develop
Mhm.
apps and ship apps to the app store, I get
Yeah.
to bring some of those sort of soft skills, which are, I don't know if they're
Mm.
soft skills of editing video and editing audio, back to
Creatives.
work.
Creative. Yeah. Yeah.
It's creative work.
Yeah.
And I've recently done a lot of work with our leadership team, especially during COVID, because they've wanted to find new ways to interact with our team members across the organization. So doing
Mhm.
top of mind videos and doing podcasts. And I just naturally kind of became like, oh, James does that stuff already. Just like sign him up to do it. And I love it. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you can also still pay me to speak and do a podcast. I'll do
Yeah.
it. And it's been really fun to take that skill that I developed for fun and that kind of became a small passion back to work as well. So, I'm always surprised in the little things that you don't think are going to become part of who you are. And then
Right.
they're almost core and fundamental to who you are.
Yeah. 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 So I was going to ask you if you do all the editing for your videos, and I guess you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do everything.
Yeah.
Somehow, you know, I've always had this kind of crazy run around life. Like when I was like you, when I started software development, I did a wide range of things. I created video games for a long time. Then I went to go work at Canon, writing printer software, and then became a mobile developer. And I just loved it.
Mhm.
And, um, but I had never done any public speaking. And when Xamarin reached out to me for this developer advocacy role, I had no idea what it meant or anything like that. I never spoke, and I was, terrified. And
Yeah.
I guess I spoke okay enough that they hired me, and I really crafted that skill. And at that time, it was just go, go, go. And, I would be on the road for 70 or 80% of the year. And it was the life work balance was what I needed at that point in my life. And I was okay with it. It was just me. And now, obviously through pandemic, but I've been also working from home for a long time. And, I got married, and we have a dog, and we have a house,
Mhm.
so many other things that are going on. I still always wanted to make time for the podcast and for these passions. So
Yeah.
me and my wife, we each have our own spare passion. So it's like, okay, she's going to take time to do this, and I'm going to do this. And it's really just finding that healthy balance. But
Yeah.
what I've done is, you can analyze, overdo, overspend so much time on anything, right? There's a quality
Yes.
bar. Am
Yeah.
I ever going to be MKBHD and like make like these stunning reveals of the iPhone video? No, I'm not trying to be, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be him. I'm not trying to be, these amazing YouTubers. I want to be at a certain level where, I like my camera. I got it off of Craigslist for $400, right? Do I
Mhm.
need a crazy multi-$1,000 camera? That'd be cool, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need that. I'm not going to take advantage of it, right? I want
Yeah.
the level that feels right for me. So I use like Camtasia, which, is like pretty
Yeah. Me
cheap
too.
software.
Yeah.
I use OBS to record everything, which is free software. I use Audacity for audio
Mhm.
editing, which is
Mhm.
free software.
Right.
And you hone your craft. And my whole thing is, if I record a 30-minute video, it should take 30 minutes to edit and, 30 minutes
I
to
wish.
yeah. So, but I've somehow, how I do is I try to bring this thing called like live to tape, which I do in podcasts, which is like if we recorded it, it's on the tape. Like it's what we recorded is what you hear on the podcast, and it makes editing super simple. And with doing coding, obviously it's not always that simple. You don't want to look at a debug compilation screen for a minute. So there is editing that goes on there, but I've always said, you know, let me sit down, watch back the video, make the edits, and do the things. There have been times where I've made super long videos. I did a 4-hour long video workshop recently, and that took, I said, someone asked me how long that took, and I said, I think it took about 40 hours. It was like a whole week of work between recording, scripting, getting the code right, editing it. Just getting a 4-hour video out of Camtasia is nearly impossible.
Yeah, no, it is.
You know,
Camtasia really doesn't like super long videos.
No. So that's why most of my videos are under 30 minutes. It's more of a Camtasia thing than it is a me thing, to be honest. But no, I do it all. I enjoy it all. And, you know, maybe one day, you know, I still have a full-time job. My full-time job is not this. And I just love doing it because I love teaching people. I love talking about stuff. And, you know, I think that's why when you reached out, I was like, yeah, I'll come out. I'll talk about anything. You know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So these videos aren't part of your job at all. You do them just because you like to.
Yeah, correct. I do stuff for work, right? So on the .NET YouTube, on the official .NET channels or Xamarin channels of past, like we do videos there. A lot of what I do now is a lot more management. So I have an entire team that we focus on our developer community, specifically around .NET, but around other things that we create in our developer division. So developer division at Microsoft creates like .NET, Visual Studio, VS Code, but we create a lot of other things like, you know, the C++ engines, like Unity add-ins for Visual Studio, Playwright, all the Python tooling, a bunch of Azure services like Azure Static Web Apps or container apps. So at my team, we have primarily focused on .NET community because obviously we build .NET from the ground up with the community, the languages, the tooling, the whole thing, right? It's an awesome stack that's like delivered by Microsoft and is open source and free. And so we want to make sure that we're engaging and enabling our product team members and our engineers to engage. So a lot of our team members, we do a lot of live streams, a lot of stand-ups, a lot of collaborations with our other sort of advocacy orgs like Cloud Advocacy and DevRel and marketing and sales. So we kind of make sure like everyone's coming together for the greater good, but then also how can we do really cool community interactions like our .NET Conf, which is, you know, a lot of community sessions. How do we focus on our user groups? How do we work with the .NET Foundation? How do we engage with conferences and all these different things? So that's purely like part of a lot of what I do. We kind of consider ourselves like kind of community as a service. Scott Hanselman is my manager, and he sort of coined that, which is if there's a new product, if there's a team at Microsoft in the developer division or even outside, and they want to engage with their community, we sort of built the infrastructure, right? So recently, the Windows terminal, the terminal team wanted to create a show around like Windows development, show power toys and do stuff. And I was like, hey, we have all the things, just fill out a form. We'll take care of the rest, right? We'll enable you to engage deeper with your community and drive feedback, and we'll take care of the hard stuff, right? Because that's sort of, I think, is in my developer mind is like, I didn't want, as a developer writing code all day, I didn't want to have to go through and assign, you know, back catalog items and do the custom research and, you know, do the design, right? I just wanted to jam on the code because somebody else removed those blocks that enabled me to be really productive. And that's sort of what our team does. So all that stuff on my personal stuff, the podcasts and the YouTubes, all after hours for fun. And I just love it. And, you know, as long as people are watching and people find value out of it, then I'll keep doing it. So,
I think I've told Jeff Fritz a couple of times, I want to have I want the same job that Jeff Fritz has. See, I would be a happy camper if I could just do that all day, right? Because I ran a user group for 20 years here before I retired. You know, actually my keynote speaker for my retirement party was Scott Hunter, which that's the first time I got to meet Scott in person. And he flew all the way down here to San Diego to do the keynote at my retirement party. And so I've been part of community since '94. And so if I could do that as a job, man, I would be so much happier than working, at an 8 to 5. Okay. I don't want to go down that road. But we've been chatting here for a little bit to get to know you, which I'm really happy about. But I think we should get to Maui. We haven't got any questions yet. So anybody out there wants to ask Maui questions, please do that. We have the Maui expert here, and one of the Maui experts here. And so if I was thinking when you were talking that if no one's heard of Maui before, what's the 1-minute elevator pitch of what Maui really is?
Yeah, so dotNet MAUI, it's a multi-platform app UI framework from Microsoft. It's completely open source and enables developers to build multi-platform applications leveraging native user interface from a single shared code base. And what that means is it enables you to build cross-platform UI. So you have one set of user interface, controls, and markup that you use. One set of APIs to access native features across iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. You can choose to build for 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them. It doesn't matter. And it develops and publishes native packages that are finally optimized running .NET and C# code on all of those different platforms. So you as a developer can leverage all of your C# .NET knowledge and build one user interface that goes everywhere, but uses native controls at the end of the day. So nothing is drawn or anything like that. There's no web view, though. We can talk about, if you are a web developer, that we have a whole new product with Blazor Hybrid that brings that web world to.
I've been checking out Blazor Hybrid.
Yeah. So that's the pitch. Yeah.
So someone's asking what side projects James pursues besides community stuff that his GH is full of. I don't know what his GH means.
My GitHub.
Oh, your GitHub is full of anything outside of Microsoft.
Yeah, so that's super fascinating, right? When I think of .NET MAUI. So .NET MAUI is an evolution of Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. So I was a Xamarin developer. I moved from Arizona, where I went to school and I was working for Canon. I moved my entire life to Seattle, Washington, because I went to PDC, the Professional Developers Conference, on campus, on Microsoft campus. And this was when they were launching Windows Phone 7. And I was a WPF and Silverlight developer at Canon and WinForms developer. I was a client developer. I've been a client developer all my life. That's my bread and butter. I don't do web. My wife is a web developer. I'm a client developer, and I'm good, right? And I sort of immediately had this, supercomputer in my pocket. And I went back to my hotel room and I made my very first phone app. It was a podcast app because I was doing a lot of podcasts back then. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And I went back to work, at the time. And I was like, this is it. We got to do mobile, this and that, because Android and iOS was coming up with. And I was showing them my prototype, like print, how we could do printer, all this stuff. And they're like, nope. And I was like, cool. I'm like, this is it. Like, this was a pivotal moment in my life where I was like, this is a moment, right, that I realized that something is going to happen and I want to be on that train. And I was young enough, at least, that I was like, I'm going to change my stars. And I think anyone can change their stars at any time. But I was like, I'm going to change my stars. I found a job up in Seattle at a very tiny startup writing DVR hardware software. So I built the first apps I built were remote DVR management phone software, which was cool. It connected your DVR and you could see your grid guide and all your shows and all your upcoming movies and schedule stuff. And I actually built an entire DVR with system with Xamarin on Android TV. It was really cool. And what Xamarin enabled us to do is take our C# and .NET code and run it on iOS and Android and Mac. And when I went to go work for Xamarin, that's what I was doing. Is I was basically building shared code and building separate user interfaces. And then the team there was like, hey, things are going in a whole new way. And people want to be able to share more code in their user interface. So let's do that in a Xamarin way to delight developers and keep things native. Native was our message. Right. So they developed Xamarin Forms, which was mostly focused on mobile, just iOS and Android. And it did a little bit of desktop at the time, never fully fledged 100%. But what happened with .NET 6 last year was that there was kind of the final completeness of unification, where we wanted to bring all of the Xamarin stuff, all of the web stuff, all the client stuff, all the things that you were doing, and have a single base class library, same project system, just unify everything into the, command line interface tooling. It should all just work the same. It's a
Right.
huge undertaking. The development
Yeah, I
team,
bet. I
I
bet.
can't imagine what they had to go through, right? And they're still working through stuff up in, to this day. But with that, it was like, hey, this is a moment that really iOS and Android, they aren't this separate product over here. Let's just make them part of .NET. So really, Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android became iOS and Android for .NET and Mac
Right.
for .NET. It's just part of it. So you can still create the separate UI. But the team had been building Xamarin Forms for like 8 years. And do you remember your phone from 8 years ago? I mean,
No.
you don't, and it's completely different. And all the
Yeah.
technology that's even used to build some of that stuff is different.
Right.
So they said, let's figure out a way of being backwards compatible as much as we can and re-architect from the ground up for performance and all the newness, and bring that on a mobile and desktop basis. And based on product feedback, they focused on iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows first, and built it in a way that could be extended to other platforms. Like Samsung, they've already brought it to Tizen. There's an open source project working on Linux support. So it's all interface based, handler based, really simple. So I fell in love with, I've always been an Android person, but during the pandemic, I switched to iOS because iMessage is way too good. And I, in my spare time, to get to the question, actually, now that you kind of back history here, is I live and breathe, this cross-platform development. I live and breathe Xamarin. I live and breathe Xamarin Forms, and I live and breathe, .NET MAUI. And my projects that I work on the side that my GitHub is full of, or the things that I do, are things that I'm passionate about. So I really have 3 main apps that I support, and they all tie into the things that I love. And one of them is, and they all mostly display numbers on a screen, but bear with me here, is when I started doing live streaming, I found that I had a hard time doing countdown timers. Like I'd have to create a video like you did, right? But I would want to make coffee and I need to add a minute, and I wanted to tie stuff into my Stream Deck. So I built an app called My Stream Timer. Very, very simple. It's for Mac and Windows. And all it does is you can have different timers that do count down, count up, different string formatting. And you can then, it just takes that number, puts it to a file, and then OBS, our software that we use, can pick it up and display it on the screen. So you can have a custom countdown and count up timers, things like this. And about, I think 150,000 people have downloaded and used that app, it's a number that counts down. It boggles my mind. And that's always
Simon's probably downloading it for me right now, right, Simon?
MyStreamTimer.com. It's amazing. It's cool. And then over the holidays is really when I get my passion. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to build something. So during the pandemic, I'm a huge cyclist on a bicycle. That's my biggest pastime. I just love cycling. And I, during the winter in the Pacific Northwest, it's either really rainy or really snowy. So you're not outdoor a lot. And one thing that I got into was, I've always been into spin cycling, and I love spin cycling. I used to go in person to class. And then obviously with the pandemic, there were no classes. So I got a $250 spin bike off of Amazon, just one that has a nice flywheel. It's heavy. And the biggest thing is that there was no sensors, anything like that. So I wanted to get a little Bluetooth sensor. They're like $10, and you put it on the bicycle pedal. And when you spin, I just wanted to see how fast I'm going. What's my rotations per minute, or my cadence? So I created an app. All my apps start with my, because it's easy. So I created an app called My Cadence, and that application connects to the Bluetooth sensor on the bike. And it tells me how fast I'm going, what my averages are, my min and my max, and like little history graphs and things like that. So those are like my 2 big passions that I built apps for, and I ship and maintain. They started for me, and then people downloaded them and used them. I'm like, that's cool. And that's it. And the final one, then I'll get over it. It's the same thing happened. Like, we got really into cross-country skiing last year, and we have an amazing snow park here. It's all community run. And in the tone of community, they groom it and they do all the, like, the cross-country skiing. If people don't know, cross-country skiing is like Nordic skiing. So there's downhill. That's scary. I don't do that. And then there's more flat and more like rolling hills kind of. And there's people that do skate. So they're actively moving and like kind of pushing themselves forward. And skate, you're in these, in Nordic or cross-country, you're in these paths, these lanes, and you're kind of pushing yourself. It's kind of like running in place, but you're moving. It's really fun and really beautiful. And our Nordic area is lovely, and they have daily reports and they have photos and all this stuff. But it was all scattered. Some of it was on their website, it was on Facebook, and it was like all these different things of weather conditions and cameras. I'm like, I can make an app. So like literally in 2 days, I got with the community members and I'm going to build y'all an app. Like this is going to happen. They're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I got a map. It has like, it has maps of it, has directions. It has like the live webcams. It has updated status reports. It ties into their system. And I just built it and shipped it. And, thousands of people like use it around that come skiing. So it's like the things that I build in my spare time, the things that I'm excited about, but I do it in the vein of like what I'm doing at work, right? Like I love to live what I teach and what I talk about, right? Because it's real. Like I decided to work at Xamarin because I loved Xamarin. And I continued that journey at Microsoft because I purely believe in the mission that every single person can become a mobile and a desktop and a web developer using C#, and that it's the best programming language, it's the best tools. And I think that, well, not everything's perfect every single day in any framework that you may use. I've been doing it for 12 years. It changed my life. It got me to where I am now. I never thought I'd be doing this. And I'm still shipping applications and updating them and building libraries and open sourcing them. It all ties together so I can talk about it. Like that's the cool part is I live it, and I can go and talk about the things that I love that I build.
Yeah. And that's, especially for the younger developers out there, what James is doing is exactly what I was doing when I was, earlier on in my career, at least. And that is, because I didn't go to college, I kind of learned things on my own. And the first couple apps that I wrote and released, I'm sorry, I'm dating myself, on BBS systems, back in the day, the dial-up modem days, and I would release apps like that, because that was really the only way we had back then. And the second app I released that way, somehow, I still don't remember how this happened, somehow was picked up by PC Magazine and reviewed by PC Magazine. And my orders went from like 10 a month to 10 a day for a while, and I was still married then. And I literally had to get my wife and my 2 toddler kids to help me do everything to get the shipments out. Right. And, but that's how I got experience. And not only do I talk about this a lot, about, especially when beginners like at the college or something come to me and ask me what they, how do they get a job? And this is what I tell them: write stuff on your own and release it, right? Because that forces you into the whole development cycle. And it forces you to do all these things that you will keep for your entire career. But the other thing, because, one of my books is, how to survive the technical interview. And one of the things I tell, especially for beginners out there, is especially beginners need to be doing this, because, when no one told me to do that, right? I just did it to get experience. And, I've written about this and talked about this a lot, but, when I would go into when I was a beginner, intermediate, when I would go into job interviews, and again, I'm dating myself, I would come in with a box of floppy disks, right? And they would say, well, we kind of want to hire you to do this kind of app. And I go, well, I kind of wrote something like that. Do you want to see it? And we install it and run it. I got the job every time, every single time. It never failed. And they never looked at my code, right? They just wanted to see I freaking did something, right? Yeah. From my own mind, to delivery. And I can't stress to people how important that is in your career, especially in the beginning of your career.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was the same way, especially when I moved to Seattle, because I had published a few phone applications, and that was sort of my portfolio at the time, right? Because I was working at Canon, and like that's cool on a resume, but I was writing printer software that's very different than phone software. And I had worked at the company I wanted to go work at. That's what they were hiring me for. And I flew up to Seattle, did the interview, and I was already, I'd studied coding books and I'd done all this stuff, and they didn't ask me a single code question at all. They were really just hiring me to see, am I a good fit for the team? And I said, oh, you don't want me to create a binary tree or do this other stuff? I couldn't do it anyways. And they're like, no, they're like, I've already seen your work, and that's what we're hiring you to do. So if you think you can do the job that we're hiring you for, we want you. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
If you don't deliver on the job, well, guess what? Then
We'll let you go.
We'll let you go, right? So like, this is your opportunity to shine. And that was really what it took me to do. Because I was only building, Windows phone apps at the time. And they immediately came in and said I needed to build for Android and for iOS and for Windows desktop and all this stuff. And of course, that's when I found Xamarin and wanted to keep everything in .NET, which I was very happy I could. But it was up to me to figure out my journey. But I had already half proven myself.
Yeah.
Sort of like you're saying, is like, here's the proof. Like, I did it. It's here. And I don't think you have to have a full, like, you don't have to have a full career where you've shined and done a whole thing. Like, the apps that I ship to the App Store, they're a number on the screen. I always joke with Frank. I'm like, somehow people pay me to put a number on their phone, but I get these stories from people, like people that have these different like heart conditions and different, different things. And they're using it to keep it going, or the different things. And how important it was that they found an app, or they were like, hard of seeing. Right. And my whole thing was, I want to make a number very visible. There's all sorts of apps that do stuff. I said, I want a number that fills the entire screen. I want to make it adjustable so anyone can see it. You can put it landscape, you can put a huge number. And people said it changed, it's just small stories of like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I never thought that me putting a number on the screen would have impact for people. And I think it's the same when we talk about talking. I think it's my favorite part of my job is when someone reaches out and is like, wow, like I came to a session one time, or I watched a video one time, like now I'm doing this thing, right? Like, I watched a video you made, or someone on your team made, or I watched Jeff build an app on Twitch. Like, now I'm doing that for a living. Like, that's so cool. Like, I think it's a whole new world that we get to live in, where we get to interact with so many more people organically. So I think one thing I've always had in my mind was always be open to change your stars, but also be able to always talk to everybody. People reach out to me on Twitter, on email, on comments, and I always do my best to respond. And I think that's how I always show that, like, not only do I love what I do, but I love everybody, right? I want everyone to be successful. I'm not just out there trying to make videos to make, $5 to buy tacos.
Yeah, but I don't make any money off my videos, so but Mahesh did have a question about the Mac. So Mahesh kind of feels, and I think a lot of people feel the same thing, that if you're going to do a iOS app, you have to have a Mac. Is that true, or can you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So with in the later years of Visual Studio 2019 and going into Visual Studio 2022, the Xamarin and now .NET MAUI teams that build the SDK, but also build the tooling, we're always trying to find ways to enable more developers to create these applications. So with Android, it's really simple, right? It's Android SDKs and tools from Google are everywhere. They're on every operating system. It's really, really cool, which means that if you're on Windows, you are on Mac, you can easily integrate into the SDKs, into the tooling, and it works great. Emulators, devices, anything. And actually, the Windows team, the Hyper-V team, worked with the Google team to make the Android emulators work better on Windows Hyper-V machines and all this goodness. And they're way better. Everyone's fought with them for years, but they're way better now. Obviously, if you're on a Mac, you can develop Mac apps, and Windows, you can develop Windows app. But iOS is in this special case where only the simulators, only the tooling, Xcode, and all of the compilation is there. And even further, to actually deploy onto an iOS device is very complicated compared to Android, because on Android, there's just a few buttons you tap and then you're in developer mode. On iOS, you can turn on developer mode, but to deploy an actual application, you need certificates, you need profiles, you need an Apple developer account. So it's very complicated.
Yeah, I heard that.
So it is. But the team over the years, there's been this sort of evolution, is how do they break down barriers? So the first thing they did is they said, well, we're going to enable you to connect from a Windows machine to a Mac on your network or in the cloud, like Mac and cloud, for example.
Xamarin was like that in the beginning, right? That's the way you did it. That's why I have a Mac, because I could connect to do Xamarin stuff, right? Yeah,
exactly. And that started where you would you have a designer, you have these things, and you could build and you could deploy, and your simulator would show up on your Mac. And the team said, well, then I got to go to your Mac. right? So they said, we'll create a remoted iOS simulator. So they actually brought the simulator that's running on your Mac onto your Windows machine, including touch controls if you had a touch screen. It was mind-boggling. But the team always was like, hey, the engineering team the feedback was, this was the case. I don't have an actual Mac, right? Or I can't have Macs on my network. How can I at least test something? How can I maybe, I can't publish
kind of see if it'll work, right?
See if it'll work. You can't publish an app. You need the provisioning profiles. You sign an Apple agreement, but at least see something.
Right.
So the team developed something called iOS Hot Restart. I like to call it deploy to an iPhone from Windows. That's actually the name of the feature, I think. But it's a really cool piece of technology that abides by Apple's laws of the EULA that everybody signs when you become an Apple developer, and enables you to debug your source code inside of a debug app. So what this does is it uses the .NET interpreter, and what it does is it sort of ships and compiles your app code and ships it into a pre-built app with the .NET interpreter that can sort of run your source code and run your app. So it works very simple. You take your iPhone like this, you plug it into USB into your Windows machine, and you will sign into your Apple developer account. You need to do that. You need to have an Apple developer account. And what that does is it basically provisions your Windows machine with all the certs and all this stuff. It does it all for you automatically. And it will take your source code and bundle it into a pre-built app that's signed with your new certs and ship it into your iPhone and enable debug mode and hot reload and XAML Live preview and all this stuff. Now, it won't have all the features of your app, because the app icon will always be a .NET app icon, because again, it's not your app, it's our app with your source code, right? But it works really elegantly, and I would say up to 80 to 90% of what you want to do in your app, if you're just creating an app that's talking to web services, doing database work, even using like Bluetooth or different sensors, that's all going to work. The only time it doesn't work is if you're really using like some native library that needs some special, building and compiling, or some health kits that needs provisioning, or something special that needs the requirement of the Mac. But for a lot of developers, it's going to get them really, really far. And then you can use, CI/CD systems like, GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps or, Bitrise or anything like this. And you can get your actual app package that's signed and delivered. So you can get really far without actually owning a Mac. But I do
kind of need one. Yeah.
You kind of at some point got to invest. Now that doesn't have to be a fancy Mac, right? I have a MacBook Air. This is an M1 MacBook Air, and this is my personal one. This is what I do all my development for Mac and iOS on. But you can have like a Mac Mini. That's fine.
I bought a Mac Mini. I had for many, many years I had the laptop, and then I decided, well, I really don't travel with it anymore. So then I bought a Mac Mini. Yeah. Yep. So it's just sitting right over there to do stuff like that.
Yeah. So the team's really trying to do that. So for Mahesh, you could do that today. You will need an Apple developer account, but just go into Google, Bing, Yahoo, and then type in iOS Hot Restart .NET MAUI, and it's in the documentation. So if you go to the documentation for .NET MAUI, you'll see under deployment, boom, 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 there's that. So if you have an iPhone, that would be the restriction. Then if you have an iPhone or an iPad, then you'd be there. So there's always you need something, right? To deploy to. So if you're halfway there, you're halfway. Then you can, get an older device too. So
well, we're almost out of time. I can't believe it already. It's I could keep talking with you. You're such a wealth of knowledge, especially about this stuff. I did have one guy said he didn't know it was you because your headshots don't have long hair. Yeah, I told him that, and he only had short hair headshots. So sorry about that.
That's it. That's the pure, the 34 years of James, and this is the last 2 years where it's gone. And I really like my old headshots because they're like professional headshots. When I worked at Xamarin, and then I did a keynote internally at Microsoft, they gave us these cool headshots, professional. I was like, whoa, cool. And then I've just been working from home for the last 2 years, and I'm the only person. I guess my wife could do professional. Maybe we'll do a photo shoot. Maybe that's what we'll do this weekend. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah.
I did have one question because, I'm sure a lot of people experience this, and I always experience this because it seems like, it's like every couple of years Microsoft is coming out with yet another UI framework or something, and those UI frameworks, through the years, especially since I've been developing, have come and gone. And so I know the new big talk is MAUI, and I know it is. I assume a lot of great stuff is coming out in November about it, which we didn't get to talk to today. I kind of wanted to ask you about that, but one of my questions is whenever I go down to think about writing an app, right? I immediately start getting into kind of analysis paralysis, right? Because I go, okay, well, do I do a WinForms, or do I do a WPF, or a UWP, or now MAUI, or Blazor? We have all these different things now, right? And so let's just talk about MAUI. So if I want to write, let's say I just want to write a Windows program, should I be looking at MAUI, or should I just go with one of the older frameworks like WPF, or I don't even know what's going on with WUP anymore, or UWP anymore. But something else, kind of what's your take on that?
Yeah, so with Windows specifically, UWP is basically they use WinUI, which is Windows UI, and they basically have just a newer version, which is WinUI 3, and it uses the Windows App SDK. So sort of decoupled components from the operating system, which is very nice, but it still kind of ships into that bundle.
Mm-hmm.
.NET MAUI for Windows is built on that. So it is built on top of WinUI 3 and the Windows App SDK. For iOS, it's built on UIKit. For Android, it's Android User Interface. And for Mac, it's Mac Catalyst, which is a newer Apple technology to build Mac apps, which is cool. What I always tell people is, well, pick the best. That's the cool part about .NET, actually, is that you have a lot of things from Microsoft, but also a lot of things from the community, like Uno and Avalonia. Like there's really amazing things that people have done. So what are your requirements, right?
Right.
Is really what I start with. And not only is it the operating system, but what are your deeper platform requirements, right? And is that thing available to you in general? So for .NET MAUI for Windows, it's like, is that part of the Windows App SDK? It's a little bit newer, so it's a little bit more restricted. So you might not be able to do all the things that you could do in a WPF app, for example. And of course, it's only going to run on Windows 10 and Windows 11. So if for some reason you worked at a government shop that you needed a Windows 7 build, well, you're a little bit more restricted there, right?
Yeah.
And the cool part is WinForms and WPF and .NET MAUI, they all run on .NET 6 and now soon .NET 7.
Yeah.
The cool part about .NET MAUI is that since it's built on top of the underlying platforms, is you have access to all of those native capabilities and native UI and native things. So you can mix and match bits and pieces. Right. I think if you ever are thinking, oh, I'm going to go multi-platform, .NET MAUI is like the place to start.
Yeah.
For me, it's what I know, right? I started building my stream timer just for Windows, and I built it with Xamarin Forms because I knew Xamarin Forms and I knew what my restrictions were. And I knew that I was going to be able to do all the things I wanted there. And then I brought it to Mac because naturally I was streaming from Mac and I had a lot of requests for Mac. So it was a really good thing that I did that. So I think that you gotta look at your requirements. And I talked to a lot of WPF developers, like, hey, I'm a WPF developer. I want to build a Windows app. What should I do? It's like, can you do everything you want to do in WPF? Because like you don't have to learn anything new, right? It's going to run on .NET 6. It's going to be so good. I mean, I think we would like to tell every single developer to start with .NET MAUI, right? And start with .NET MAUI, and this is your thing. If you're a web developer, start with Blazor. It's part of ASP.NET Core, so you have MVC and Razor available to you. You can mix in React and Angular or use Blazor.
You can mix in MAUI now too, right?
Yeah. And then you can take Blazor components and put them into a .NET MAUI app or into a WPF app too. So if you're a web developer, you have that thing in Blazor Hybrid, which is cool. So I think what I would tell you is, every app is different, right? And if your requirement today, I talked to a lot of developers, like my company is telling me I need to build for Windows, Mac, Linux, and the web. I don't care about phones. I can't use XXY. And I was like, well, guess what? You don't have to leave .NET because you can use Uno or Avalonia, which are built on top of the same things that .NET MAUI are built on top of. They just have a different sort of experience that they bring to some of the different operating systems. So that's what I think we want to get across, is that .NET is an ecosystem. It's a community. And while yes, Microsoft does create our frameworks that we want to build for these different things, we want to enable the community to add on for the scenarios that they want to build for.
Right.
So I start every single application as a dotNet MAUI app because that's what I now know and love and breathe, right? Even if I was just creating a Windows app, I would do that. The cool part about dotNet MAUI for Windows and for Mac, at least for desktop, is they really made it a first-class citizen. They added multi-window support. They added like menu bar support in dotNet 7. They're doubling down on the desktop. So a lot of mouse actions and click and hovering and all this other stuff to make that easier. So you only see it get better. But if you're like, hey, I need to ship an app in 2 months, do I go learn something completely brand new just to learn something completely brand new? Or do I just ship a thing over here?
Stick with what we have. Yeah.
You're cool. And, if you architect your app in an MVVM style and XAML type of way, or just put your stuff in a separate class library, guess what? All that code can go anywhere. And that's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You might have said it, and maybe I didn't catch it. Can you put MAUI into WinForms or WinForms into MAUI?
Great question. So no. So how it works today is, we don't really have a way of bringing, like let's say a page that you built in .NET MAUI into WPF or into WinForms. It's just going to be into the Windows App SDK. But Blazor can. So
Blazor can. Yeah.
The Blazor team worked really close with the WinForms, WPF, and the .NET MAUI team to say, hey, y'all already run .NET. How about we leverage the native web views on those different operating systems and enable us to bring Blazor components into the native WinForms, WPF, or .NET MAUI app. So if you are a Blazor developer, you can now basically take your Blazor controls, mix and match UI, and bring it to those other places. And I think the team, the .NET MAUI team, is interested in those other scenarios of creating, I don't want to say like XAML Island, but like, .NET MAUI islands.
Yeah.
Well, the .NET MAUI, Maui's an island in Hawaii, so we have a lot of Hawaiian theme stuff. But, little MAUI islands, if you will, where you can bring those into other apps. Who knows, maybe .NET 8, .NET 9. I would love to see that. I would love to see it go into native apps like Objective-C and Swift and Kotlin apps, like little, islands. And I think there's so much new technology happening in .NET and in the community. Like WebAssembly is just something that's mind blowing. It's just so cool to see things evolve. Yeah. What I never thought I could do 5 years ago, 2 years ago. Now I can just file new projects and wow, this is amazing.
Right.
So lots of cool stuff. Yeah.
We're out of time, but I wanted to at least ask you, is there like a really awesome feature coming from MAUI in November that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think with .NET MAUI in November, I think it's going to be like kind of a re-release with .NET 7, almost like hey, this was like a soft launch because we sort of launched, the .NET MAUI launched in May. The tooling is sort of finalized. But, in November with .NET 7, you'll have the brand new versions of Visual Studio for Windows and for Mac, 17.4, final builds for Mac, things like this. I really feel like it's completing the story. And I really feel like it's completing the story of desktop and finalizing the backwards compatibility with Xamarin Forms and tooling there. So to me, I would almost consider it like not a 2.0, but sort of a hello again, everyone. Here we are. And if you've been thinking like, oh, it's the summer, it's brand new. A lot of people when stuff's brand new, they want to give it some time to cook, right? So I think that's what the last 6 months have been, or what are the gaps, what are there? And the engineering team and the PM team have been really working to figure out what that means for .NET 7. So I really think it's sort of this, hey, here's the final deliverable app package all in one, no matter where you're developing, because like we talked about, it was a huge engineering feat for them to do. And it's really exciting, the work that they're doing. And I'm excited for the future and this cadence that .NET's on. So to me, that's how I would look at it. So if you've been like, oh, I don't know, it's new. When .NET 7 is here in November, give it another look. But hey, go to, the .NET website, .NET, click on MAUI, give it a try today, install some stuff. The team would love the feedback. That's for sure. And that's what I think. I think it's awesome. So give it a look.
Well, it's we're out of time, and I know Simon wants to go to bed. So
thanks, Simon.
11 o'clock or 11:30 there, or 12:30 there, something like that. And so I should let you go before he gets mad at me. I think he might be enjoying this because he hasn't bugged me about, hey, Dave, you're over time. And But anyway, thanks so much for spending part of your Saturday with me. I learned a lot. I had a great time talking with you and kind of getting to know you. And hopefully, if there's an MVP summit again, I can come see you, next year if they have one. We really didn't get to much Maui at all, except for we did talk a lot about Maui, but I think I'm trying to say is I'm going to have you back. So I'm probably going to have to hit you up at the beginning of the year or something like that, have you come back and talk about some of the new stuff that came out for Maui in November. And it seems like a lot of people like you. And one person said, I made a WPF and now I followed James and learned to get better and learn Maui cross platform. So it looks like you're hitting a really good niche, And so, but anyway, you're welcome to hang out and talk with us afterwards. Otherwise, go have fun with your wife and have a great rest of the weekend and have a great launch in November.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, definitely check out .NET Conf. There's gonna be so much good stuff. .NETconf.net. But yeah, thanks for having me. Super appreciate it. And always will come back anytime to chat.
Great. Thank you so much, James. Well, that was an awesome talk. I like all my guests but I really like to talk with James about just not only, developing software, but, kind of what some of us do in the beginning. And we also talked about speaking and things and how speaking can, really help your career. Has dramatically helped my career. And, that little thing that told me in 1994 to go learn to speak really paid off. And that's my story. It seems like James has a story like that too. And I'm sure many of us have a story like that. And hopefully you have a story like that in the future. And if you do, I want to have you on the show. Let's talk about it. I'm always looking for guests. All right. So we got a couple more slides to talk about before we go. Of course, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I've been working super, super hard this summer. I'm doing benchmark testing for .NET 6 and .NET 7. It's been a struggle because I've uncovered some issues with benchmark.net. And so I've been struggling through those, but I'm almost done. I think I'm down to the last couple tests classes. I'm actually getting working now. And so if you want to see what I've been working on before it comes out of my book, you can go to this link here and check out the latest .NET 6 and .NET 7 performance metrics. And some of the stuff I'm showing is you'll be surprised, let me tell you. And I also have said, I've done this a couple of times on Twitter, that I've gotten some really good praise about the .NET team because I'm seeing some really great performance increases in .NET 7. Not everywhere, but certain areas I'm seeing some pretty dramatic performance increases. So I'm glad the team continuously works on that. So because we need that. So I hope you go check those articles out. I'm releasing like a new one every day. Also, don't forget my coding standards book is out, and I hope you go pick up a copy, available on Amazon, wherever you can get it delivered by Amazon. So please do that. I saw this image last week, and I decided to dress it up a little bit. This when I first looked at this picture, I go, that's technical debt. If you ever worked at a team where everything you need to do goes into the technical debt pile and never gets worked on, that's what technical debt looks like to me. It's like a cancer that grows, and it never gets fixed. And I'm working on another meme about that too. I'll release next week, hopefully. So technical debt is not a good thing. As always, I hope you will help me help the kids from India. I'm going to be visiting the Voice of Slum next month. I'm really, really, really excited to go back and visit and see how the funding that I've been sending them has helped their programs there, including restarting their vocational training. So there's 3 ways to help. You can go to voiceofslum.org and donate directly. You can also go to this GoFundMe page that I set up that I think I only have one new donation that I need to send. So you can go there if you want to do that, or you can pick up a copy of my Code Performance book, because 100% of the proceeds of that book goes to the Voice of Slum. And so I'm really excited to go back and visit and bring them some laptops next month. And so help me help the kids from India. All of you out there listening right now can't afford to help others in need. And so I hope you will help this project I've been working on for years now. And with that, I want to thank everybody for being here on this great show today. First time in 3 weeks. Simon is writing something to me. Let me see if I have to read it. So next week I have Jason Alba, a Pluralsight author. So if you learn stuff on Pluralsight, Jason has got a ton of courses on Pluralsight, and he's going to be on next week. And we're going to be talking about soft skills, something that I don't think any of us. I try to talk about it as much as I can, but especially at conferences, these things aren't talked about enough. And so I hope you will join me next week and Jason and talk about soft skills next week. Also, don't forget to donate blood at your local blood bank. I'm donating tomorrow. I tried to show you a video of my donations, but stupid Windows won't show MOV files anymore unless you pay for a codec, which really upsets me. But anyway, please be safe and listen to your medical professionals. COVID's not over. People are still dying from COVID. And I actually talked to somebody from the San Diego Blood Bank this week, and they are in a dire shortage right now. So please, please, please go down to your local blood bank and donate blood now. They need it now. And I put out a tweet. I think yesterday that if you donate blood this weekend and send me proof, and you have a United States post office address, I will send you a copy of my book and some swag. So please, please go donate blood. You know how important it is to me. And it only takes you 30 minutes. It takes me 2 hours. But you can spend 30 minutes to help your fellow human. And with that, please make sure you send me suggestions, comments, who you want me to invite on the show to Rockin The Code World at csharpcorner.com. And with that, I will see you next weekend.